Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But you know, KSJE is now listener supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast. But let me introduce my guests who are here with me this morning to help us talk about this very important topic about mental health for individuals in crisis as part of CHIC. And Larry Moore is here. He is a new chairman, relatively new chairman of the Community Relations Commission for the city of Farmington. Larry, good morning. Thanks for coming in.
Scott. Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Yes.
Also joining us here in the studio is Officer Shaun Goodsell from the Farmington Police Department. Officer, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good to have both of you here with me to talk about this important topic this morning. And Larry Moore, let me talk with you a little bit about the CRC, the Community Relations Commission. You are relatively new to the chairmanship of that commission, but you've been on board for about a couple of years, right? Or a year and a half?
About a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so this commission strives to do what within the city of Farmington? Give us a little bit of background, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Yeah. The CRC was the first commission in the Four Corners, and it was established back in 2007 by then Mayor Bill Stanley. And the effort that was going out at that time, and is still going out today, was to address people issues, maybe discrimination issues that would come up in our community, issues that may arise, and issues such as race, gender, religion, age, sexual orientation, and disabilities. And so really a commission that would help those folks or those issues that would come up and represent them in a way that civility would be the number one outcome of those.
Sure. And so the commission receives concerns, complaints, I guess, and investigate
We do.
these things that are brought before you?
Yes. In the last year and a half, I know we've had, I believe, a couple complaints that have come across, and we go and we research those, and we talk with individuals and try to come to a resolution on that and make sure that there is no discrimination going on and there's people being treated fairly across our community.
Right. And again, you mentioned that this was one of the first commissions established to deal with these types of things anywhere in the Four Corners.
Correct.
And
yes.
can you make recommendations to the city council or to the city manager, to the police department based on your findings?
We do. We do make recommendations and do what we need to do to take care of the situation. And again, make sure that it is dealt with in a peaceful way and in a way that would just allow everybody to walk that out.
Right. And so I know that in the past, the commission has worked with the police department and the city and other groups in the community to have kind of focus on certain issues. Immigration, I think, was one that comes to mind.
Right.
And so now this morning, our topic is mental health for individuals in crisis, and there is another kind of a community meeting or conversation planned to talk about this important topic as well, right?
That is correct. Yeah, back in April, we did have a immigration topic, and the CRC is wanting to do these community forums that will bring attention to these different issues that we feel we have in our community and even in our county. And so it was on immigration. We had, I think, 100 people come out, had a great showing, had a great panel that helped cover that. And again, on September 14th at Kiwanis Park from 11 to 3 p.m., we will be covering the mental health issue that we feel needs to be brought to the surface maybe a little more and just made our community made aware of it. And it's called the Four Corners Dimensions of Wellness.
Right. And that event is planned for the 14th, as you said,
Correct.
from 11 to
Yes.
3,
Yes,
Kiwanis
sir.
Park. Okay. Let me bring Officer Goodsell into the conversation here to talk a little bit about these individuals in crisis. And Officer, I know there's been some training and some more focus with the police department about these types of individuals who most often have their first contact with law enforcement rather than maybe a social worker or a counselor or someone maybe that could also offer them some help. But can you tell us a little bit more about your training and kind of what you're looking for when you run into folks who may be having some mental health problems or in a crisis situation?
Absolutely. So I started with the police department about 10 years ago, and even 10 years ago, I don't think mental health or mental illness was on the radar of law enforcement like it should have been. So probably within the last 5 years or we've really kind of focused on our approach when interacting with people in crisis. I believe our police department's close to 100% of us have been trained in crisis intervention techniques, which is a lot of reflective listening, being able to identify maybe this person is suffering from mental health issues, and kind of what we focus on is we teach our police officers to slow things down, because in the old days it was kind of, hook them up and take them to jail, and we've realized that that's not solving anything. When we're interacting with people that are in crisis, we've trained our officers to slow it down, interact with the person, ask questions, and try to figure out a way to resolve the situation without having to use force and not take them to jail if we don't have to, which sometimes we do in order to get a temporary solution. But in addition to that training, I supervise what's called our crisis intervention team. And what we do is we'll do the follow-up after the fact. So just like you mentioned, a lot of times people's first interaction when they're in crisis is with law enforcement, and sometimes that's their only interaction. So what our team does is we go in after the fact, maybe the next day, and try to interact with the individuals when they're not in crisis, to try to hopefully identify resources in the community that they can utilize to help stabilize themselves, try to obtain voluntary information from them so that if they do find themselves in crisis again, our officers, our patrol officers can have that knowledge to help better interact and find a peaceful resolution and hopefully a long-term solution to helping stabilize them. So one, we don't have to keep interacting with them on a law enforcement level, and two, so that they can be productive members of the society and learn to overcome and cope with their mental illness.
And it sounds like what you're talking about is something that could save money in the future, and I know it's not all about dollars and cents, but I know for cities and budgets that is a real issue. And so if you can identify a problem that someone is having and get them treatment for that problem, and then does that kind of hopefully stop the revolving door of maybe them coming into contact with one of your officers and find themselves back in jail or back in trouble?
Yeah, absolutely. We still routinely have individuals that we will receive calls about 2, 3, 4 times a day, which is taxing on resources. And ultimately, they may go to jail for some low-level misdemeanor offense, which solves the problem for that day. But they're not getting that long-term help that they need or a long-term solution, so they get out of jail and we're interacting with them 3, 4 times a day as well. So if we can come up with these long-term solutions to where people aren't calling due to their erratic behavior, then I think that reduces the tax on resources across the board.
Sure. And Larry Moore, I imagine that's something important to the Community Relations Commission too, about being able to maybe stop the pattern of people getting into trouble or being in contact with law enforcement and finding themselves back in jail if it's really a mental health issue and really not a criminal issue that we're dealing with? Right.
Yeah. Again, just there are different issues in our community, and how do we address those? And how do we make a long-term plan so that they are getting complete health in the long run?
Right. And Officer Goodsell, I imagine a lot of times too, when you're dealing with these individuals, they may be having a mental health crisis, but that's maybe not their only problem or concern or issue that they need help with. Perhaps they're homeless, perhaps they've got a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction or some other underlying things as well, and they present with multiple problems. Is that often what you find?
Yeah, I believe that's accurate. It's not to say that everybody who's mentally ill is homeless or everybody who's mentally ill has addiction problems, but that definitely does go hand in hand at times. And so when we look at the resources with our CIT team, our crisis intervention team, we're looking for all resources, not just necessarily the mental health medical side of things, but if we can get these people in some sort of stable housing, if we can get them maybe with a job or something like that, just to form that stability in their lives, then that could help their cause in all aspects.
Sure. But certainly police officers are not social workers. I mean, you're trained, I guess, to a certain degree, but that is certainly not your area of expertise. But you have gotten a little bit more about that training, have you not?
Absolutely. Sometimes it feels like we're social workers, but that's definitely not our area of expertise. And I think that's why the collaboration is key. And so we work with several mental health providers, several counselors, and that kind of stuff. And at times we can, if we're interacting with somebody in the crisis, we can actually call, a mental health counselor or some resources out to the scene so that they can use their expertise right there on the scene and connect them with that resource right away. Other times it's having meetings after the fact, talking about specific individuals and identifying who has the expertise to provide the resources that they need to be successful.
Right. But you feel you have the support that you need from the training you have and other programs in the community, the resources to be able to refer these individuals to maybe get them the help they need to stop that pattern, whatever it is?
I think we do. I mean, I think we can definitely use more. I think stable housing is probably the hardest thing to find here in Farmington. We have certain things, certain avenues to get that, but they're heavily burdened and taxed on their resources as well. So we can definitely utilize more. And I think here recently we've identified some resources we didn't know we had, which is going to help in the long run. But I think we have a solid foundation to grow on, but I think there's a lot of growing that should occur too.
Sure. And that sounds like something that I hear about, which is one of the benefits of CHIC, the Health Improvement Council, is that it gets all of you at the same table talking about the resources in the community, making everyone aware of maybe some things that they didn't think we had available to us here in Farmington and San Juan County. Is that a good definition of CHIC, Larry Moore?
Yes, sir. I would think so. And that's really what we're trying to do with these forums is bring the different folks together so that we can have an open conversation. And in having that open conversation, of course, including the community, so that the awareness is there and we get community help.
Sure. And how important is it, do you think, for Farmington to be doing these things, to having this Community Relations Commission and taking the initiative to bring these people together, to have these conversations? I mean, sometimes it seems like as the largest community in the region, Farmington takes a leadership role in some of these social issues.
Right. Yeah. I think that, what I've seen in our first forum, and I know we'll see again in the second forum, is just the opportunity to speak, to get some things off your chest,
right?
To allow you to share things that maybe you never had the chance to share before. And we've seen that. We've seen some negative comments. We saw a lot of positive. And so to allow our community to have a voice, not only to learn, but to have a voice, I think is very important. And like you said, we are the hub of the Four Corners. If we can get it right, it's going to trickle out into the Four Corners, I believe.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's important as well. And maybe, too, to maybe clear up some misconceptions folks may have about this topic. Is that another byproduct of having a forum like this? I would hope.
Yes.
Everything I read on Facebook may not absolutely be true.
That's right.
Maybe,
That's right.
Possibly, officer. I mean, I imagine you find that all the time in your line of work as well, right? There's a lot of social media influences, I think, on our conversations about these topics, and not everything, I hate to break it to the audience, is true on social media, and being able to hear it maybe from the source and from these professionals who are in our community can really help to alleviate some of these misconceptions and misinformation that surrounds this topic.
I think conversation is huge. I think a lot of people almost fear the topic of mental health just because people aren't familiar with it, and what we're not familiar with, we fear. In one specific instance is I purchased a new house, and right across the street there's an individual that suffers from apparent mental illness, and initially my wife was a little bit afraid, right? But as she's kind of grown to learn about schizophrenia and this individual in particular and got to know him, she's become very almost defensive of him and wanting to help him and that kind of stuff. So I think when we have that conversation to say, hey, these people are suffering from a true illness, a true medical condition, and get that conversation started to where we get past that stigma of mental illness, that's when I think we can start really making progress in solving, hopefully, the issue. That's
a good point. I mean, there's a lot of negativity, unfortunately, that still surrounds the issue of mental illness, whereas folks maybe aren't so ashamed or shy about talking about their reaching out for help to cure an addiction or to treat an addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs or other things like that. But for some reason, mental health still seems to have that flag about it. And
that stigma.
We can work to fix that. Larry Moore with the Community Relations Commission. Again, you mentioned the other forum that was held back in the spring on immigration. Now the other one coming up now on this mental health topic. Is this something the commission would like to do more of then throughout the year? Is this something that
It is. We had one in the spring. We're having one in the fall, and we'll have two this year, and we're looking to plan more for next year. And so we are identifying the different topics that we feel need to be addressed, working with the city, working with FPD, and then working with those who are in direct contact with that topic. And again, just trying to raise the awareness, trying to educate our people, educate our community, and coming together and working together with these different agencies, we get a well-rounded representation of the topic, and that's really what we want to do.
Right. And was there anything in particular that got this topic before the commission, or just something that came up? I imagine you have a number of things that you're looking at to maybe do a forum about, but is there any in particular incident that caused this to become front and center?
I don't think there was an incident in particular, but the board or the commission as a whole thought that, this is something that we need to go after, and this is something that we really need to put out in our community.
Right, and here we are.
Yes.
And so again, the event is coming up on September 14th at Kiwanis Park, 11 to 3.
11 to 3. Uh-huh.
And the format, I assume, will be similar to the one in the spring. You have a bunch of representatives from various areas that deal with this topic?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and again, everybody will have a chance to share and to talk about what they do and just bringing that awareness to mental health.
Right.
Yeah.
Officer Goodsell, let me turn back to you a little bit about this crisis intervention team that the police department has, and I don't think a lot of other departments in the region have a similar team. Are you aware of any?
Well, I know the San Juan County Sheriff's Office does a good job as well, but a lot of the smaller agencies, again, just don't have the resources to be able to devote to it. It's kind of turning into a nationwide trend. I just got back from Seattle for a crisis intervention conference last week, and a lot of the big cities actually have full-time officers staffed for crisis intervention. Now, luckily, I don't think Farmington has a problem that's going to require full-time officers, but we definitely do keep busy with these referrals. So typically what will happen is an officer will interact with somebody in crisis on patrol, and then they will refer that individual to our team, and then the next day or two is when we will reach out to that individual and basically see what we can do to help, again, provide services to them or learn about their situation so that we can better respond to them in the event that they do have a crisis in the future.
Gotcha. And so obviously other cities, other communities are dealing with the same types of things that apparently we're dealing with here as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's a nationwide issue. The homelessness, the addictions, and then mental illness in addition to that is something that law enforcement nationwide and worldwide are really dealing with. Again, how do we best approach this situation so we don't use force on anybody that we don't need to, and then how do we get them the long-term care that they need so that we don't run into them in the future?
And is this something, once you've made contact with an individual, is this something that maybe if you run into them again or have contact with them, or if you're dispatched, there's a note or something that then flags them that they've had contact with the crisis intervention team before, so that as your officers are responding, they have a little bit of background maybe about this individual before they get there?
Yeah, so we're actually formalizing that process now as far as getting some sort of information out to patrol. Now, our town is small enough to where those people that we interact with on a regular basis, patrol is pretty aware of their situations. We talk about the hooks, the things that we can utilize to gain rapport and trust with them, stuff to avoid talking about with them that may send their crisis escalating even further.
Right.
So we're working on that formalized process right now, but right now it's kind of through emails and word of mouth and that kind of stuff. We have to balance it because at the same time we want to respect that individual's privacy, right? Especially if they are dealing with mental illness. So we're not talking about what mental illness they have or anything like that, just more of how we can best respond to them in the event that we interact with them in crisis.
Certainly, and I know there's a lot of confidentiality rules about mental health treatment and medical treatments and things like that, but I can only imagine that for an officer arriving at a scene, unknowing maybe what the mental health or status of that individual might be, it would be helpful to maybe have a line or two in the dispatch record about what's going on.
Absolutely.
Or what the previous contact has been about.
Absolutely. And it works, like I said, through informal communication probably right now. Those officers are being armed with that information that they can at least know what to avoid to keep it from continuing to escalate. And then hopefully what they can talk about with this individual that'll help bring them down a little bit.
Right. And interagency too, I would imagine. I mean, if I come in contact with you in the city limits, but then I'm out in the county and I've got a sheriff's deputy who's having to deal with me, would they also maybe get some idea of what my prior interactions have been?
Absolutely. We interact very well with the San Juan County Sheriff's Office and their CIT team, their sergeant over there. And so we're continually sharing information about individuals that maybe reside in the county but come to Farmington to work or vice versa, because like mental mental illness knows no geographical boundaries, so it's important to share that information. And we'll even get situations to where people have moved in from out of state, and those agencies will contact us and say, hey, just so you know, we've had mental health interactions with this individual here in our jurisdiction, so that is always helpful as well.
Very true. And again, as we get these individuals the help that they need, that creates then a healthier community.
Absolutely.
And that's really the goal, I think, from
Absolutely.
both of you, to be able to be talking about this. And so again, Larry Moore, as we talk a little bit about the Community Relations Commission to try to bring these topics to our collective consciousness as a community, we want everyone, I think, living in Farmington to be healthy and happy and successful and do all that we can as a community to lift each other up and to help them in that regard. And that's kind of what the CRC tries to do. If there's a complaint or a concern, that's what you deal with.
It is, yeah. And part of our vision is that that everybody has an equal opportunity. No matter who you are, no matter where you've come from or anything, you have an equal opportunity to be a part of our community. And so some of these issues make it hard for you to be that part of the community that we want you to be or that you want to be. And so to bring awareness to them, I think is huge. And we're excited that we can be a part of this, that we can put some of these topics out into the community. And like I said, 100 people showed up to our last forum, which I think was great. We had it down at the Civic Center. And, I look forward to lots of people coming out and being educated in this topic.
Sure. And I think it's a great number, and I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but we have a community of over 100,000 people, and so, I mean, 100 people is great, a great
We've
start.
got a long way to go.
Yeah, and it'd be great to have it at Mickey Park or something when we have an
Yes.
overflow crowd,
Yeah.
or the Civic Center, but I hear what you're saying, and it's small steps that create larger steps, and we can get there, but
Yes.
but I know those 100 people that showed up are a great first step. And so
Yes.
that's important, and they'll spread the word out to their
That's
friends
right.
and their associates as well. So the event is coming up again. If you wouldn't mind repeating the details for us.
Yeah, September 14th. It's 11 to 3 p.m. at Kiwanis Park.
Okay. And again, it's another forum, again, about mental health for individuals in crisis. And the idea is you're going to gather a bunch of representatives to kind of talk about different areas of this very complex topic, but hopefully
Yes.
get the word out and hopefully answer some questions from individuals. Audience members will have a chance to ask questions if it's similar to the one in the spring.
Right, yep. And again, the name for it is Four Corners Dimensions of Wellness. And we would love for everybody to come out, be a part of that. And just
Get
see
their
what
questions
takes place.
answered.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can, again, get some correct and accurate information out
Yes,
to the
that's
community
very
and information about the resources that are available too, because I know at the forum in the spring, there were some other community groups that had some information there and could share what they
Right.
do with the members who were there and the residents who were there.
That's right.
So that would be great. Officer Goodsell, again, the commitment of the Farmington Police Department to, again, send you off to these trainings and bring things back to share with your officers and other things is ongoing.
Yes.
And is this a training that you go on annually or just depending when it's offered?
So the crisis intervention training that goes to our police department completely, that's a 40-hour training. That's one and done type of thing. And then through our in-service trainings, which we're required to attend yearly, we do a refresher training as well. Now the CIT conference that I was able to go to last week with a couple of our other officers, that's a once in a year type of thing, and obviously budget allowing, we were able to attend those. But one thing I'm grateful for is we have the support from our administration in the city as well to go to these trainings, to arm ourselves with knowledge, and so we can get those best practices so we can implement them here in our town to make sure we're doing everything that we can.
Well, great. Very good. Well, we're glad you came back and shared what you learned with us this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. Thank you very much. Larry Moore, thanks for the work that you and the rest of the commissioners do on behalf of the community on the Community Relations Commission, and appreciate you being here as well.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. My guest from the Community Health Improvement Council, we are talking about mental health for individuals in crisis, and again, the event that's coming up on September 14th from 11 to 3 at Kiwanis Park here in Farmington. I'm Scott Michlin. I'll be back with more in just a moment here on KSJE. The time is 8:35. Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.